There are many different kinds of bandages on the market, but a Neenah company now is making a first of its kind.
It's called a carbon bandage. In testing, it can last for multiple days, potentially saving patients money from doctor's visits. In a First Alert update, Jamal James speaks with the creator of this new bandage to tell us how it works.
For Neenah biotech entrepreneur Ashwin Raj Karthikeyan, he made it his mission to make a change in the healthcare industry.
And that's when I started really seriously thinking, we can create something that can actually help people.
It all starts with a piece of wood, putting that in a kiln and burning it, called carbonization. It's then activated with steam at 1800 degrees in this machine, which can also be used to clean the environment in something called the 3 green process. 100% renewable energy that makes 3 times the traditional amount. It's then molded into what you see here, a carbon bandage. This side of the bandage is hydrophobic or water resistant, and it protects the wound from exterior infections. On the other side of the bandage is the absorption polymer, which locks in all of that fluid, creating somewhat of a gel, preventing the wound from getting bigger. Working on this for over 12 years with his father, Dr. Karthikeyan, founder and material scientist at Claris Carbon. He says through the hardship of losing his grandmother to a diabetic foot ulcer to setbacks like the pandemic, nothing was stopping his son from achieving his goals.
Though it slowed down, but that really boosted him to work, spend more hours on the laboratory bench to refine. And then I know he's up to the challenge.
Overcoming that challenge to make an impact.
Some of these patients have had these wounds for years. They've gone to this place, that place, and it hasn't worked. And they're finally like, this is something that could, definitely help them. We're not saying we can help everyone, right? We definitely think there's significantly improved rates of healing.
Karthikeyan's next step is expanding his operation in October to Madison and the Fox Valley, with the hope of bringing carbon bandages to patients in India next year and America soon after. In Neenah, Jamal James, Action 2 News.
Amazing to think of
Very
that.
cool,
Amazing
yeah.
technology. Super
Good
smart
luck with it.
people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the pack